Good morning, everyone. It's Lindsay. I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome to Unfiltered Snapshot. And also, I'm now putting it back to gallery view. And I'm also here with Becky. We haven't done this for months. Like, I don't know, maybe August might have been the last time or July. Who the heck knows?
Yeah, definitely before school started.
Well, and for those of you that remember, Becky teaches high school, teaches Spanish in New Hampshire, and I live outside of Boston. And so yeah. Question, Becky, how has your sleep been recently?
Interestingly, my sleep has been great. I have been having myself go to bed, like I start prepping for bed literally around 7:30. And I am in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock at the latest. And this even includes on the weekend. So I have been sleeping a ton. And yeah, I sleep like a rock. And I think being pregnant makes me extra tired. So I extra sleep. I don't know. But how has your sleep been?
So, oh yeah, and in case you didn't know from last time, Becky's pregnant. How many months are you now?
So we're just past 20 weeks, so past the half-baked point.
I like how you say we, because at the end of the day, it really is you, but no, that's cute. Like you just keep
No,
you're
it's
like
just
we.
you, because this has definitely been a process that I am not bearing alone. He has been an absolute saint. Like I'm driving him nuts all the time. I'm literally sitting here eating right now because I eat all of the time. Um, but yeah, it's been a ride. So we definitely are both pregnant.
Man, well, I mean, who I'd like to is he eating a lot?
Ice cream, a lot of.
Okay. Okay.
That's
It's
how we're handling this. And he's also cooking a lot more, and he's been enjoying using his new smoker. So I've been eating venison steaks and buffalo burgers and all sorts of interesting things. So yeah, he's
sweetness.
rocking that.
No, so like the reason I ask about sleep is because to be real, like I don't know if I've slept. I don't think there's been a month that has gone where I could say, oh, my sleep has been normal
Yeah.
since I don't know. I guess you could say my surgery intersected with the pandemic, so it's kind of a
Intersected with
blur.
the election of 2020.
I mean, just everything from it was like mastectomy, pandemic, you know, what else have I gone through? Radiation, all these changes in like the political landscape, racial reckoning.
And it was all kicked off with appendicitis. Remember way back when that was a big issue? And now that's just like, it doesn't even come up in the conversation. Oh, yeah, I had appendicitis.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had appendicitis summer of 2019. That was the first time ever I had to do surgery. Didn't know that would be a prep for what's going on now. But to go back to the topic, the reason I bring up sleep is because I've gotten to the point where I will wake up in the middle of the night, but then I'm also at a point where I will then go back to sleep. Or
Yes.
maybe I slept so early that I wake up so early. So if I don't go back to sleep, at least I got a good amount of sleep. I asked because it was still dark out, right?
Mhm.
When I woke up. And for many of you, you know that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Clearly, that's why I had a mastectomy. And so um, I've had this thought on my mind for a long time, but sometimes I don't write it out. And I finally wrote it out in one of these online support groups for breast cancer survivors. And this is what I wrote like super early this morning when it was still dark outside. I asked people in this online breast cancer support group, does anyone have moments where they reflect on their pre-cancer body and think something like, I wish I had saved my nude photos. Would it be weird if I contacted my ex to find out if he still has copies? And so I didn't know how people would respond. I mean, the purpose of these support groups is that you could just, have some real talk. And at this moment, 49 people have reacted. Like, they like either did a laughing, mostly it's like a laughing reaction, some caring, some love responses. And then different people just, I'm not gonna like share people's personal stuff, but basically just people this really resonated this really, really, really resonated. And some people just, someone said something like, thank you for posting this. Someone said kind of a good idea. People are like, yes. Someone showed a photo that they got from a friend. I guess this survivor a long time ago, pre-cancer, like, flashed a camera. And so this friend gave them a photo of that, and then like
Epic.
and put like a sensor bar over it. Um and yeah, I just who knew that like my middle of the night thoughts like really would resonate with this population, but I had a feeling it would. Like I was thinking to myself, there is no way I'm not there's no way I'm the only person who's had a thought like this.
Yeah, and that's what I love about social media. Now, I hate the addictiveness of it. I hate the fact that they've really developed these things so we get stuck in them. But what I do love is that you can find a group for anything, and you can find your people on the internet, and you can just be yourself and say those things without risk of people judging you. And of course, there's going to be trolls in these groups too, but then they get kicked out. So I love these groups too. I'm in one for pregnancy during COVID. I'm in one for teachers who are pregnant during COVID. Yeah, I'm in a houseplants enthusiast group on Facebook. So yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about social media and social networking is you can literally find your tribe so you can be your unfiltered self. So that's an awesome example of how they're useful.
I mean, yeah, and I have told people, like, I know that people think a lot of these platforms are evil. I mean, I definitely know their addictiveness. Did you get to watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix? I
I
think
haven't yet.
you would appreciate it. You would, because it speaks to exactly that what you're talking about. Um, and yeah, there was a moment where I mean, and I think I'm someone who it's interesting. Like, I mean, I pick and choose what social media I'm a part of and how I want to engage with it.
Mhm.
But like, okay, I mean, I know that, for example, different emails over time, like this is pre-social media, they may have had things like their groups, like Yahoo groups or something, right? Or like there probably
Message
are.
boards. Message boards were really big in the 90s and 2000s because, like, my mom found her crew on a message board, and we ended up all taking a trip together to Europe when I
Oh, I
was a
remember this.
teen. And we all became, I'm still BFFs with some of the people that we met on that trip. So, message boards, I think, were like the precursor to social media as we now know it.
Well, but like, here's the thing. Like, let's say someone started a website and they're like, oh, like, log into this forum and meet other breast cancer patients and survivors. To me, and who knows, it would have to be a very compelling platform. To me, it would be just like, oh man, one more thing I need to sign up for. Like, that's like the advantage of social media, for better or for worse.
Yeah, so that actually brings up a good question. In the course of your cancer diagnosis and treatment, did your doctor suggest finding an online support group through social media, or did they give you more information about in-person opportunities
I,
specifically at the hospital?
I don't think that's really I can't speak for all doctors, but in my experience, I think when someone is in want of like social emotional support, they're
Mhm.
like, oh, talk to the social worker or
Yeah,
something, right?
but did
And
they give
then
you these informal options?
I would say that when I was at because I switched hospitals.
Yeah.
When I started off at a smaller hospital, the social worker had it was like one social worker, right? And so she had support groups, but they weren't really like specific to my situation. Like it was like maybe people after or going through treatment, whereas I was in more of the pre stages of that.
Mhm.
And then so at a smaller hospital, there might not be capacity to serve like your demographic, right? However you define your demographic. But then that social worker just mentioned, like, oh yeah, there are these online support groups, but by no means did this person say, oh, here's a list. It was more like, oh, like I found it on my own. And then when I switched hospitals, there were all these support group options. But even then, I would still say that, Yeah, I mean, I've done a combination of both support groups affiliated with my hospital and those that might be affiliated with like broader programs across the country. So actually, an example of this is a partnership that my hospital did with a nonprofit. Oh, what's the name of it? It's like it's killing me. Um, hold on. I want to mention them. So there is this organization called Elephants and Tea. Have you ever heard of them before?
No, it sounds very interesting. I wonder what they do.
So what I'm going to do, like you can't see this, but right now I'm going to like put this in the chat so that you could like look at the website for yourself. Um
Elephants and tea.
and like here, let me just read off like what they do. So elephants and tea, blah blah blah.
Love their slogan. The elephant in the room is cancer. Tea is the relief conversation provides.
So
Oh, I love that.
so like so hold on so the mission, and you could all read more of it, it's elephantsandtea.com, but on their mission they state, Elephants and Tea is a media company with the mission to help adolescent and young adult patients and survivors and caregivers know that they are not alone in their fight with cancer. So I found out about a workshop that they were going to do, through, I think, through a mailing list from my hospital.
Uh-huh.
And or yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my hospital. I'm on a few different listservs, and it was like a what was it called? Like healing through writing workshop, I want to say. I
Yeah.
am looking this up. Healing.
I am loving their sense of humor, spilling tea with the G's. Oh my gosh. And then they also say join the herd, like the elephant herd, to sign up for their newsletter. It takes a herd to help our cancer community. I love this organization. Just their marketing is solid. What a great like PR job they've done. Brilliant. Cancerversary #1. Like these are, I love they're talking about cancer and sexuality. Like this is not your typical support group that you would see a hospital send someone to. Is this
Well,
affiliated with your hospital?
so it's more like it popped up as an event on the listserv.
I see.
And so that's how I found out about it. I mean, and then when I got to the actual event, that's when I realized, oh, it's not just my hospital, but other people. And it actually was a small workshop. It was, I think I was one of 3 people. And I think, you know what, this is what I'm going to say. Like, we can come back to the cancer part of this, but this is something that I am finding with like just Zoom events, right? And I think I noticed this like in different parts of my life, my professional life, my personal life. I think a lot of people are wondering, like, oh, what makes a successful event, right? And I think if people are looking at just the bare numbers of how many people come, that's not the best indicator of what a successful event is. And it's unfortunate because I know people in different parts of my life who are choosing not to do events because they think, oh, it's only gonna, serve like people not even in the double digits or so. But I'm grateful that that Elephants and Tea still decided to do this healing through writing workshop, because I feel like I'm in a population of people that's in dire need. And I'm happy that when they were deciding, do we do this workshop or not, it didn't hinge on like, oh,
The
did we
yeah.
reach our goals?
Well, we're also not having to pay for like rental space. You're not having to pay for incredible amounts of PR because if you have a newsletter, you just blast it out to your community for free. So the opportunity costs for doing these types of workshops that are really targeted to a specific population have drastically dropped. And using social media as a vehicle helps you to get those people in the room. Like I am definitely thinking about developing some more workshops around supporting teachers and students during hybrid learning. And I keep coming back to that thing. Well, what if only 2 people show up? But 2 people showed up. Like that's really cool. So it's just really awesome that we can, using the internet now, because people didn't think about this stuff as intensely as we do now. But the opportunities to connect with your crew.
I mean, and this is something where Okay, I think now that we're talking, I think I'm starting to like notice my passion about this. This is where I would strongly encourage people, regardless of what they do for a living, regardless of what they do in their free time, to really rethink what it means to be like well connected, what it means to build community. And again, what does it mean to be successful?
Yeah.
Because if we're in times where people like myself, you know, we live alone, we might be isolated, or maybe like you live with like the same few people or same one person, but it doesn't mean that that you don't have any other desire to connect with other people, right? So yeah, if two people come to your freaking workshop,
Chris
you
doesn't want to
expect
talk about
more.
plants with me. He has absolutely no desire to talk about how incredible that the staghorn fern that you see behind me is doing pretty well. Like, he doesn't want to talk about it, but I have people on the internet that are like looking forward to updates on my staghorn fern.
Wait, I mean, okay, like I've been trying my best as a plant mom, but tell me, what is so like what do people need to know about your plant?
Well, I mean, it's just we all like share photos of our plants and the stuff that we're like watching in our plants. And even if it's just like a couple of likes and someone's like, oh, how cool. And then like you build these connections. It's really hilarious. And this is my first staghorn fern. So I was kind of excited about it. And they're epiphytes. I think that's epiphytes. So they grow off of other plants. So they don't usually have them in soil. But I have this one in soil because like I haven't had time to go buy like the special pot and stuff that you need for it. But they live off of other plants. So typically people just like attach them to a piece of wood and then hang them on their house or the wall of their house. So I'm doing mine untraditionally.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I just love that I can geek out with people and I don't have Chris rolling his eyes at me, even though he does care that I'm happy about my plant. He doesn't care about the genus and species and the light requirements.
So
Or
so
if I propagate a plant, I've got a couple propagations going for some other plants of mine. And like I take pictures of them and send them to the groups. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the root growth. And I can talk to people about stuff I care about without driving the people in my physical life crazy.
so how are you, like, I mean, I talked about some of the ways I'm connecting with people, like I went hiking on Sunday.
Yeah, was that your first solo hike?
I mean, I've done it before. Like, okay, I live close to a reservation, for those who don't know, and it actually is a pretty legit one. Um,
Yeah.
that's like in my town, and it crosses over into bordering towns. But I am someone who is just trying to rely on like a PDF map on my phone, and I meant for it to be a short hike, like a couple hours, but then I kept like missing turns or getting on the wrong turn. And I ended up like, so it wasn't my first hike, but it was my first like really like strenuous one alone, but it was not on purpose. It
Yeah.
was it
You
was
had
by
were forced
accident.
to problem solve. And that's what I love about solo hiking, especially at the specific place you went, because that's where I first got confident as a solo hiker was there. Because there are so many interlacing trails. There's so many different ways that you can go around that park, that you're bound to get lost. And the process of figuring out by looking at the maps, triangulating with where you're at, and it's just, I don't know. I really enjoyed the process of getting lost and finding my way out there.
So it was, and like I said, it wasn't my first solo hike, but I guess in the past, I've chosen places like where they're more of, I guess these are called like bridle paths, where it's like, oh, I have, it's like, oh, it's mostly flat, not really challenging. And then somehow I ended up on like the toughest trail. But then that's how I had to like find people and be like, wait, do you know what trail we're on? Or sometimes they could help me, sometimes they couldn't. And it was actually interesting when I was on the tough trail and I saw how far I had to go down. I was just like, man, my legs hurt. Like I could feel the cramping in my thighs. I might even go today. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
And
it's beautiful out.
my yeah, like I met this couple that, and I was trying to explain like, oh yeah, and like I guess as things were getting more challenging, I was like, also my arm doesn't have the same extension it has had before, and then because of surgery, and then the guy in this couple is a guy and a woman. He's like, oh, is it like carpal tunnel? I'm like, oh, I'm a breast cancer survivor. They might have felt awkward for like a second, but either way, they like helped me, and then they tried to, of course, point me in the right direction, and I was in the right direction until I wasn't. So I cannot tell you how many times I turned around. And so for me, it's like even though I wasn't doing it with a group, it was kind of nice to be out and see other humans,
Yep.
right? And even though I was for the most part social distancing, of course they had to get close to me when I'm like, "Where are we?" And I'm like pulling out my phone. So yeah, I'm thinking about whether or not I go because actually I walked there, and you were so shocked to hear that I walked
Yeah.
to the
'Cause I
reservation.
used to take the red line all the way to the end, and then I would take a bus for a bit to get to where we hiked. And I'm just like shocked because I can't think of a way to walk where it's not dangerous. But there must be another way because I was clearly on like highways, and I'm like, oh my God.
No, like oh, trust me, and I'm someone who knows the area enough. So when I like checked Google Maps, I'm like, ha, they're trying to get me through like a very busy area near the highway. No thanks. But I
Mhm.
was able to figure out which street, when you're crossing the highway, is like more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah.
Oh, and you'll appreciate this. So I was basically there all morning. And then I here's the thing, because I have bags, I try not to make it too heavy, but toward the end I was, because again, this hike became longer than what I thought. I'm like, I barely have any water. What am I going to fucking do? It was like I was trying to milk it, man. It really
Yes.
it
That's
was
great though. What an awesome experience. I
it's,
I haven't
it's
done
over
it.
2 miles.
Way to go.
So
Way to
that was 2 miles just to and from. So that's like at least 4 miles, right? And then 4 miles
plus
plus
the hike.
the hike itself. The one that was meant, but you know what though? I'm happy I ended up on the wrong trail because the wrong trails were the easier trails. So
Well, I saw you took a picture of the trail you were on, and I'm like, all right, like that's awesome. I love that trail, but I love it because you have to like sometimes climb up a rock face.
I did not like that. What, like toward the end, because there's certain points where either like the difficult and the easy trails intersect with each other, and I of course would choose the wrong one. So then, yeah, the guy would ask me, he's like, "Oh, are you alone? Like, are you from here?" And I'm like, not from here, but I've been living in this area a long time." And he's like, "Do you not hike a lot?" I'm like, "Oh, I just try to go with the easier trails. I ended up here on accident, like, because you could just, it wasn't my first time in the world hiking, but I was not like, oh, dude, I was wearing leggings that were not meant for like heavy hiking. So there was a point where I'm like, oh, Lord, please let the threads stay together. Cause it was not, yeah, it was, I'm glad I survived it. I'm going to have to figure out like
The girl
why.
you. I love it.
But yeah, oh, guess what? On the way back, you might have seen that I posted this online. Of course, I saw a few thin blue line flags, right? And like one of them even said Trump 2020 and all that jazz. And this was like of course, a few days after the election. So I don't know, I'm just going to give you an opportunity if you wanted to say anything about the election or not. I mean, I know that it's all we hear about
Yeah.
everywhere. Um,
Here
blah.
in New Hampshire, at least in southern New Hampshire where I'm at, it's been very quiet. Most people have kept up their Trump flags. I do notice on my way home or on my way to work, somebody took down their Trump flag, but then put up a "Don't Tread on Me" flag in its place.
Could you talk? Because I kind of I recall that from like history class and all, right?
Yeah.
So what's the significance that takes on now?
So I originally, in my head, always associated it with the American Revolution. So I always thought about it as like for individual rights and all of that. However, now And again, I don't know if that's actually what it's from, but now it definitely has taken on more of a white supremacy model, I guess. So it seems to be that the more individual rights, I put that in quotes, that
Mhm.
might be offensive, but um, white supremacist kind of angled social groups are clinging to that now. At least that's what I found in my research. And I'm actually ashamed because I had purchased a Don't Tread on Me shirt from a thrift shop years ago, back when I lived in Cambridge. And I wore it all the time because I thought it was like, America, like this is as close as I can get to like supporting America. And here I am, like walking all over the place wearing it. And then I was in Canada and I was wearing it at a thing, and I got, a Facebook picture taken and posted it on the internet. And my friend was like, "Oh my God, are you seriously wearing that in Canada?" And I'm like, wait, I think there's something more to this than what I think. So I definitely like was embarrassed that I was using this symbol, or I was wearing this symbol thinking it meant one thing, but completely has transformed into another thing. But I'm
Like,
actually,
I want to look this up right
I
now.
know, I'm like, what is the,
So, okay, if we're looking at dictionary.com, originating as a motto on an iconic Revolutionary War flag. Yep, see, that's
Mhm.
how I remembered.
Okay, yeah, me
Don't
too.
tread on me is his, yeah, blah, 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 American patriotism. Today, blah, 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 general expression of personal freedom and individualism. In the 2000s, the phrase became associated with a variety of libertarian, conservative gun rights, and far right political groups as a way to express their beliefs.
And here
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
it's with the
Tea
snake.
Party,
Okay.
the Tea Party was into it. But it definitely is very common up here in New Hampshire. And I didn't know that there was kind of this negative connotation with it until recently. So, yeah, but it was very interesting when this, I mean, it was one of those no more bullshit flags. That's what they had up, not the official Trump 2020, but the 2020 no more bullshit flags. And so they took that down and put up the Don't Tread on Me.
Well, okay, and let me ask this because you mentioned earlier that you're pregnant, right? Um, I mean, I know that you have plans to raise your child there. I mean, what are you what's on your mind as you're thinking about this is where I'm going to raise my kid?
Yeah, well, one thing that's reassuring is that my county actually did vote for Joe Biden. I found that to be really interesting given that I may see like 4 or 5 signs throughout town. I mean, it's mostly Trump everywhere. And I was having a conversation with my husband during like right before the election and on election day. And he was like, I just think that the Trump supporters up here are louder. I don't think that there's more of them. And I said, I truly hope you're correct. And then I started thinking if every house that doesn't have a Trump sign in front of it is a Biden supporter, again, like, I don't think anyone's really excited about Biden. It just was like an anti Trump vote. But if every house that doesn't have a sign up is not in support of the current president, then Chris is right. It's just that when I see the signs, it's so jarring because I'm like, oh, I make all of these assumptions about the person who has the flag in front of their house. And one might say that that's incredibly rude to do. And I think we've discussed how I feel about that because I've had moments where I kind of like realized that I was making assumptions about other people based on one thing. But just after everything that's been going on, I just have such a hard time believing that people who are still in support of the current president of the United States of America, there's definitely something we profoundly disagree on. And
Mhm.
it's that human rights are human rights. Like there should not be these different types of limiting of things. And it makes me it makes me a little nervous, but
Yeah, I mean, and I have loved ones, people from my childhood who've been supporting the current president. I think there are people, I put it this way, like, recently I've had to, like, I don't do this a lot, but like I did unfriend someone in social media. And for me, it's not that I stop loving these people, but you kind of just need to know your
You
boundaries.
you take a break for your
Like,
own self.
well, and here's the thing, there are all these dialogues. I was actually in a council meeting last night where there was a workshop on how to have uncomfortable conversations. I was no, it's funny. I got like, where's this oh my gosh, who's the name, what's the name of that that trans woman from Orange is the New Black?
Oh, I can't remember her name either.
Hold on. Like, sorry, this is where you're gonna see that I'm like not.
Sophia Borsett, or is no. Yeah.
Oh no, 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 no. Well, from like the older seasons, it would have been Laverne Cox,
Laverne
right?
Cox. Okay.
Yeah. So what I was going
Yes,
to
that's her character name is Sophie.
oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Goes to show you how much I watch it.
I haven't either, but
But like, I think I saw her do an interview. It might have been with it was with Trevor Noah like a while ago, right? Like it was during pandemic times, and she was talking about how there's like that difference between being uncomfortable and unsafe.
yeah.
And I think, especially for people from more minoritized and marginalized backgrounds, we have to make that distinction. Yes. I mean, I think just by nature, whether it's like being a woman of color, being queer, trans, whatever it is, we're already in situations where we're forced to feel uncomfortable, whether we wanted it or not. When it starts to feel unsafe, and again, only we can decide that for ourselves, we need to draw up those boundaries.
Yep.
and
Yep.
and that's really, it's unfortunate. There are certain people I am not talking to either, period, or talking to as frequently. But yeah, and it's like, okay, we could agree to disagree, but I know where I stand on certain issues.
And I need to keep this space that I am interacting in as safe as I can for myself. That means physically in some cases, but emotionally as well. Like it is hard to see people that you care deeply about saying and sharing things that hurt you. So definitely. And I think that that's something that I don't know. The question you posed is how do I plan on raising my child in a state where there are very, very strong and vocal disagreements about things, and in a place where you can walk into an election polling site open carrying a gun, like that's legal here. Um, I think it's just going to spark a lot of interesting conversations with their peers and them coming home and asking questions or them seeing things at people's houses. Yeah, I think it's just going to or it's going to be the impetus for a lot of really interesting and in-depth conversations from a young age. And when I was young, my mom had those conversations with me. I remember having these really deep conversations about issues that were, a little bit more taboo back then, but my mom never shied away from them and really implored me to think about them and come up with my own opinions, and never straight out told me what was right or what was wrong. So I really appreciated that. So I'm hoping to give my child a very similar experience where they feel like they can come up to their own conclusions, and, I'll support them.
So okay, we're talking about the child you will have. You have a job where you are working with other people's children. What's that like now?
Hell, we're currently operating in what I like to call hybrid hell. Um, to all of the teachers right now, I know that this is a tough time, but for those of you who are teaching remotely, when we were remote for 2 weeks, it was like the first 2 weeks that I felt like I could breathe this school year. Hybrid is so tough. And with my school's policies, the kids can opt in and out of remote and back into hybrid and then back into remote as they wish. So they're not set in stone. So I never know on a given day who's going to be in my classroom. I never know how many students will be in my classroom. I don't know how many will be online. And it has now gotten to the point where in the beginning of the year, it was 50-50. It was easier to manage because I was able to say, all right, well, I have 12 kids online. You guys work on this. I have, about 10 kids in person, but 2 of you are fully remote. So then I'll Zoom in those 2 kids into class, and it was easy. It was still hard, but it was easier because I could focus on only 2 remote relationships and then the rest of the in-person relationships. But now it is completely flipped to where I have 20 online students and 4 in person. And it's really hard for me to even say, okay, at the 50% mark, you 12 do this, you 10 log on with me, and I'll hang out with these 4. That's still really, really, really difficult because I'm either robbing the kids on the computer of a connection or I'm robbing the kids in person of a connection. And before it was like, all right, I can do 2 kids online meagerly well, like I can deal with it. But now it's like these kids in person are in school because they really need that human connection. Like that's why they're there. And if I stick them on a Zoom call while I'm in front of them, then it just it defeats the entire point of them being in school. So yeah, it's been hard. It's been really hard. I have definitely not worried about my curriculum. I am focusing on giving my kids fresh starts, like when they've missed class for 3 weeks and they haven't turned anything in. And so now consequently they're failing my class. I just send a video message home to mom and dad and to this child and saying, hey, like, I know you've fallen behind and I know things are tough. If we meet and talk, I'll exempt you from everything you missed and I'll give you a fresh start. What do you say? Is that the right thing to be doing? I don't know. Is it what I would do, what I would want a teacher to do for me? Yes. So I'm just trying to operate under the what would I want a teacher to do for me if I were in that student situation. So that's just how I've been evaluating what I'm doing in the classroom.
It really makes me think about what we were having at the beginning of this conversation, or close to the beginning of this conversation, talking about like, oh, events, whether they're for our professional or personal lives, and like, how are people thinking of success and all of that stuff? How are they thinking about connection? Um, it just it really makes me feel like, there might be those people who are still going on to like carry on with business as usual.
Mhm.
um and sure, I can give people credit for that.
Mhm.
At the same time, I also think that if we don't acknowledge that all these other people who can't keep up with business as usual, if they can't do that, it's obviously because of larger reasons. And
Yeah.
I have a fear because, like, not every teacher is going to respond like you. Not every supervisor will respond like that.
And I don't know if it's the right response either, because there are a lot of teachers who believe what I'm doing is not fair, because then the kids who've been pushing through and the kids who have been coming to every class and the kids who've been struggling to do their work aren't getting the extra acknowledgement, right?
Like, be like, oh, like, you're still able to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, because I think someone might counter that and say, well, they probably have certain privileges that allow them to do that. Like, maybe they have a better internet connection. Maybe their parents or guardians, whoever, have been able to set up a life for them where they can do this learning with ease. I mean, but if you think about it, whatever inequities were before the pandemic are there, they're just now manifesting themselves differently. Um, but then I don't know, if we get back to, like, say, non-pandemic times, it's like, it's funny, then do you stop acknowledging that those inequities exist? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I actually was speaking with a family member who is a part of the leadership at her school, and they're getting ready to transition to hybrid learning. And I just said, hey, these are things that nobody is talking about. This is really truly what's going on in these kids' homes. Like, every single person in the household, including teachers' households, their schedules are now upside down. 2 days a week they're in school, 2 days a week they're at home. One day they're either at home or at school, just kind of depending on what the schedule follows. And then some days there's too many sick teachers, so we're all waiting for a text message to say if we actually have to come into school or if we're remote. Every single morning we're waiting for that text message about if it's okay to come to school or not. Like, we don't get one if it's okay. We get one if it's not okay. So I basically spend the first hour and a half of my morning glued to my phone waiting to see what the announcement is. Like, and then parents have to think, am I driving them to school? Am I making them a lunch? Do I have to prepare a lunch to leave in the refrigerator? Do I have to arrange for a babysitter? Do I have to make sure that I call them so I know that they're up in school at 7 a.m.? Because it's really hard for a teenager to be up and on their own and ready to go to school at 7 a.m. Like, do I have to knock on their door this morning? It is so hard. We're expecting these 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to act like college students when they're
college
not.
students don't even act like college students. Come on.
But there's a whole lot of personal responsibility that has been thrown at these kids. And I don't hear anyone acknowledging how incredibly difficult it is to not have a schedule. I'm losing my mind because my schedule's all a mess. I never remember what students I'm going to have that day. That's terrible to say, but I can't keep it track of it because it flip-flops all the time. I don't know who's going to be in front of me that day. And since everyone's switching between remote and hybrid, I'm just barely getting to know my students. It's November. So while I want to be remote again, because then everyone's at least in the same position, I know how hard it is. I was talking to some students in my study hall yesterday, and she's like, the only reason I'm here is because I'd fail chemistry, because I can't handle the days that we do chemistry remote because the teacher's internet connection falls out, mine falls out. It's a live class. So if I miss anything, then I'm screwed because it's not like the information's recorded.
Yep.
So, because we can't in New Hampshire, we're not allowed to record our live classes. So
It's a state law. Like, is it for privacy reasons?
yeah, New Hampshire has some of the toughest student privacy laws in the country. So I do technically have permission now because I've written every single one of my parents to request in writing permission to record classes. I don't do it yet because I think the little tiny bit of participation that I get from my students each class online is due to the fact that they know it's not being recorded. If they knew that we were recording and posting every class, they wouldn't even take a chance at responding or turning on their mic. I would lose them 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I said last class, and I'm going to have a conversation with my kids, but last class, I was like, all right, guys, so we're going to do our first speaking activity online. I'm going to divide you guys up into 4 breakout rooms. And as soon as I said that, log off, log off, log off, log off.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were petrified. So clearly that's something I need to either rethink. I'm not going to force them to do it because if it's so terrifying that they're going to log off the call, there's something wrong. And I want to address what's wrong. But a lot of teachers are taking this personally. A lot of teachers are like, I put all this effort in and then they don't even show up. Or I can't believe this kid has missed 3 weeks of class, but is filling out the attendance form. So why are we now marking them as present? Like, I get that there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. And a lot of stuff doesn't seem fair. I get it because fair is a different thing right now in schools. And I love that we're having the opportunity to rethink all of this stuff, but
Yeah, you're right. Success and fairness. Like, what is equitable?
what's the point?
Well,
That's the biggest question. What's the point?
no, I hear you. I hear you. I know we're gonna have to log off soon, but I'm recognizing we had so much to talk about. I didn't even acknowledge that today's Veterans Day.
That it is, which is why we're able to have this call because I'm at home relaxing.
I can't remember if you have any veteran connections, or I think you had a cousin and stuff.
I do. I have a cousin who was in Afghanistan. Unfortunately passed away upon being discharged. And then I have a grandfather who was in the Navy, a grandfather who was in the Air Force, I think. He may have been Navy. and I had a grandfather who was in the army. So I have a lot of older family relatives. And then because my like parents and like their generation were like anti all of that stuff. Most of them were hippies in some capacity. So,
Mhm.
um, and they missed the Vietnam draft by a couple years. So,
Yeah.
but in the younger generation, just my cousin.
Yeah, like one of my cousins is a veteran, from the Navy. And then one of my exes is a vet as well. Um and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I don't no, actually, when I was in college, I used to do writing with one of my grade school friends when he was deployed.
Mhm.
Because yeah, like we were at that like when I was in college, some of these people were like, fighting the fight. But yeah, it's crazy. Like all this stuff has happened, and who knows what's next for us. I mean, we shall see. Like we know what the results of the election are. We will see what the transition looks like. Um,
Yeah.
I I have so many words on that, but that could be another conversation altogether. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just be kind to yourself and be kind to others. That's what I've been trying to do. And this morning I got up and I was like, we're going to have a good day today. And I've just so far had the best morning ever. So just try to make time for good things to happen because we need all the good things we can take.
I hear that. Yeah, and on a final note, aside from be kind, I would say love justice, and
Love justice.
FYI, justice and accountability are different, but love them both. All right. Well, you all have a good rest of your day. Happy Veterans Day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.